Go.
Fantastic. Move those controls out of the way. Thanks for having me, and good to see all of you. Some names I know, most of you I don't. And as you can probably guess, in my role as a management chair, I'm probably not somebody you want to have a lot of interaction with. And hopefully you don't. And hopefully this is the one time that we have to have interaction. Talk a little bit about what my role is with the fraternity. As the risk management program chair, I oversee our fraternity's risk management education programs. I'm also one of the investigators when something happens. It's unfortunately never if, it's always when. And I serve primarily as a resource for alumni volunteers, but to a lesser extent chapters, on just kind of understanding the risks and everything that come with being a volunteer in our organization, and a little bit about what we are. Do you have a poll ready to go, or I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question about what are some of your risk management concerns?
Yeah, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, so
for those of you that want to unmute yourself to offer some insights, you're welcome to, or if you're more comfortable, you can use the chat function.
Cool. So we'll just kind of kick this off a little bit with what are your risk management concerns in serving in this role as a sectional chair? And if you have none, that's fantastic. You'll probably have them after we're done. I don't know if you've got anything coming in the chat yet.
We have some folks typing in the chat.
Cool.
I'll speak up. I was a risk management chair back when I was in Active Brother. So one thing I dealt with a lot was getting people signed up and approved with the university to drive university vehicles to and from regionals, sectionals, conferences like that. So anything I can do to help my section be prepared for that stuff would be on my to-do list, right. I think.
So kind of understanding and navigating the policies that surround campus vehicle usage as campus policies. Be unsurprised to know we have 300 chapters who have 300 different ways of doing things based off of their campus policies. Some, it's kind of a free-for-all. You can do whatever you want. Some micromanage every level of aspect of chapter activity. And as a section chair, knowing what chapter is allowed to do what is definitely a tool that needs to be in your toolkit.
We've got one message here in the chat. One of the concerns is protest involvement while wearing letters.
Yes, we can talk about that at the end, but that is definitely a tricky situation for us to understand. Okay. Well, keep your thoughts coming. I want to make sure we stay on time and be respectful of everybody's time and commitment here. I'm going to run through a little bit of the risk management presentation, and this is normally presented for students, but you're going to get a little more information about your side of things as alumni volunteers. As you understand, like why we have a risk management policy is because we have to protect our students, protect our volunteers, protect our chapters, but also protect the good names of the fraternity. We tell the students it's all about behaving responsibility and show respect for our fraternities and values and all that. But realistically, when it comes to thinking about risk management in the broad scope, we say that in ceremony that everybody was installed in the office, that the fraternity is looking to you for leadership. And we mean that for our students, and not as much for section chairs, but for our students, there's a lot of trust placed in your hands. We place the same amount of trust in our students that we place in our national elected officers, in that when you take office in a chapter, when you take office as section chair, you are a named officer in a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. For our students, that's a great thing to have on the resume. That's a great experience for them. That's fun, some responsibilities that come with that. Some things are pretty awesome, like getting that real world management experience of running a program and leading others. Some are a little more solemn, like being a chapter officer means that they have a fiduciary responsibility to the chapter. What that means is they are obligated legally to act in the best interest of the chapter when they are executing their duties. It also means that the chapter officers are liable for the actions of the chapter under their leadership. So that means things like you can be recognized for all the great things that your chapter does by getting a plaque from your school, getting recognition from the fraternity, become a chapter of excellence. You can also be named in a lawsuit. Our students can be named in a lawsuit. Fame and infamy can both be theirs. So we have this policy. It's a framework. It's guidelines to kind of understand what you've actually gotten yourselves into as chapters. One thing I do want to note, we put into effect an education requirement that every chapter must complete a risk management training. Every pledge master, pledge member educator, every associate member, they have to have this opportunity to be instructed the fraternity's policies, risk management policy, at least twice a year. If you are a president, a VP of membership, a pledge or new member educator of a chapter or a petitioning group, within 30 days of your election, you have to go through risk management training. There's a course that the fraternity provides through Highwire. Marissa can elaborate how we get the link to that because that's outside my scope. But it is a training that is required and is paid for by the fraternity that each one of these chapter officers, regardless if they've done it in the past or not, has to do. One of the things the students complain about, we know, is that they don't like that the fees go up. One of the ways they have a direct control over the fees is by participating in risk management education. There's also a component to this that every elected official of the fraternity, every section chair, every regional chair, every board member, every appointed member of the operations council must go through risk management training within 30 days of their election or appointment. For those of you who are here, this is your escalate management education, so we'll be checking the box for you. Broad strokes of the policy, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, because if you've gotten to the point of being a section chair, you have seen this presentation or parts thereof multiple times. But we're going to highlight some things that are more relevant to you as section chairs and your interaction with chapters. First is our policy on hazing. This is a pervasive problem on all college campuses. It is not unique to Greek letter organizations, not unique to Alpha Phi Omega. It's not unique to anybody in college. I work professionally in student affairs at the University of Illinois. This is a thing that happens everywhere for us too. I'm not going to read this, but I'm going to tell you that hazing is something that's defined as any action or situation created intentionally, and I emphasize that word for a reason, to produce mental or physical discomfort, harassment, or ridicule. There's this misguided belief that shared adversity builds character and bonding. As someone who works in academia, I can tell you there is research on this that shows that's not what hazing does. It is not the social glue that everybody makes it out to be. In reality, hazing is a form of abuse, centered on power and control over another person, and the connection that people feel is a trauma bond and facilitates unhealthy relationships. Fun fact, it is also a crime in at least 44 states. Many of those states have a clause on it that says that the hazing is severe enough. It can go from a serious misdemeanor, which is on the level of domestic violence, reckless conduct, and a DUI, to a full-grown felony charge, complete with prison time and massive financial penalties. Students don't understand this when they are think they're just having fun. But in today's hyper-connected society and very easily searchable world, just being around hazing, just being charged with it, that's a lifelong record that follows you. The students are adults, and that's such an easy way for them to knock their life out of track, just from the get-go. It happens in many ways, in many forms. Historically, Matt, let's know, it's a third-degree felony in Florida. Historically, hazing is a group of people get together and say, wouldn't it be funny or hilarious or great if we did blank? And gets out of hand from there. Groups that engage in hazing are often victims of hazing themselves. So the most likely person to haze somebody is someone who was previously hazed. And they're just choosing not to break that cycle. Some examples like forced consumption of alcohol, paddling, branding, forced physical activities, forced wearing of items that are not in good taste, forced road trips, scavenger hunts, for items that bring shame, embarrassment, or cause vandalism. Just because it's not listed here doesn't mean it is not hazing. We all know, some of us in college probably experienced hazing ourselves, or we know someone who experienced hazing. Greek life certainly full of it, but again, marching bands, ROTC groups, athletic teams, club sports, anywhere where a group of people come together and let bad ideas come to the front is where hazing can happen. You cannot volunteer to be hazed any more than you can volunteer to be punched in the face. You cannot be volunteer to be assaulted. The commission of a crime is not negated by the victim's consent. It doesn't just happen to members, to pledges and members. Anybody can be hazed at any time. I want to go back to focus on the word intentionality. Some campuses, some students take an interesting view of hazing where anything can be construed as hazing that makes a member uncomfortable or pushes their comfort level. The trust falls can be considered hazing, and if you look at it in the right light. But it's the intentionality, it's the objective. What are you trying to get out of it, and what is the reasoning behind it? So, is having a photo scavenger hunt where you go around having the group take photos at specific cat statues on campus hazing? No, it is not. Is having a scavenger hunt where you have to bring back the head of a statue on campus hazing? Yes, yes it is. There are campuses that we can't go to anymore because hazing has gotten, the chapter's hazing there, so out of control that the campus said, we don't want you back. In at least one case, an underground chapter in the 90s did a scavenger hunt, and one of the things they had to bring back was furniture. So they went to this house in the college town, and they stole a couch off the front porch. And the owner of the house was not too happy about that. Came out. This was a school in the South, and came out guns a-blazing, literally guns a-blazing. And that chapter, which was not actually a chapter at the time, they were no longer an active chapter of Alpha Phi Omega, and had not been for several years. We didn't know they were there, still doing things. One of those unofficial pledges, because they weren't an actually registered pledge with Alpha Phi Omega, died. And we are not allowed to go back to that campus anymore because of this. So it's the intentionality, and it's the thing. It's so much behind it. Many of your chapters will require members to do things like do an interview of active members. Some campuses consider that hazing, some campuses do not. But again, the action, what is the objective here? What are you trying to do? Having interview questions can be acceptable activity, but having interview questions where, hey, active member, tell me when you lost your virginity. Hey, pledge, to get my signature, you must perform I'm a Little Teapot. That's hazing, that's wrong, and that's certainly falls into morally degrading behavior. So the research is clear. Hazing is bad. It does nothing to build a brotherhood. It does nothing to help our members. We take a pretty dim view of it as an organization, which I'm sure you are very aware of. And that's where a lot of you guys come in. You are most like the most earliest line of defense when it comes to this, when it comes to identifying hazing. If it sounds fishy, if a chapter is doing something and they say, and you catch wind of it, some questions, but let your region chair know, hey, I think something's going on here. We would rather you bring it to us and have it looked into than ignore it and think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's probably a duck. May not be a duck, but it's probably a duck, and we need to look into it. The next thing that you will encounter a lot as alumni volunteers and as section chairs, our number 2 problem is alcohol and drugs on campuses. Alcohol in the college experience is extremely intertwined. We all, I'm sure, participated in things that some of us are old enough where thankfully social media was not a thing when we were in college, and that's why we can hold such positions of austerity and power. Other people know the dangers of what happens with college students in the alcohol experience, but it's just so intertwined. And there's a lot of views on, is this just a rite of passage, or there are larger public health risk issues? I'm not here to get into that debate today. I'm talking about how we handle it in the fraternity. We ask the students this often when we present this, but they ask the question, is Alpha Phi Omega a dry organization? And so I'm going to ask you, the section chairs, are we a dry organization? Dry meaning alcohol is prohibited. Got a nope. I got it pins. I got Luke hemming and hawing, and I know he wants to give.
I don't know if I can hear me. It's not letting me unmute. I was just going to say no.
The rule is that we don't have a general prohibition on the consumption of alcohol by our members during fraternity events. We're not dry, but we have some non-negotiable guardrails. Yeah, a lot of it is no, but it depends. There's some guardrails that must exist before, that must be put into place before 1 drop of alcohol can be dispensed at any time. First, we have to find out, what does the host campus say? There are many campuses out there that have said all Greek letter organizations are dry organizations. And despite the fact that we are a Greek letter organization, but are not on any Greek councils, if they say we're dry, we're dry. They say all student organizations cannot have any events with alcohol. That includes us. And that's the rule of the land. And the chapter may not have events, official or otherwise, where alcohol is present. Campuses declare that, then their journey stops there. And that is a much easier situation for you as a section chair to deal with, because you've got the school on your side saying, hey, this isn't happening. But if the campus says it's okay, or more specifically doesn't say it's not okay, we go through these kind of checks to see if alcohol is okay. First, if it's part of recruitment or any part of the new member education process, no alcohol can be present. It doesn't matter if they're of age. Our position as an organization is that alcohol, APO, and new members, pledges new members, don't mix. Second, at no point can chapter funds be used to purchase alcohol. This means things like a chapter choosing to set aside money in their budget for alcohol, which most chapters don't do anymore. Might still be some stragglers out there. But it's also things like doing a pass the hat at a chapter meeting, where they collect money and then give it to a member who's 21, and then they go have a party that way. That's considered chapter funds going toward alcohol, because you're collecting it during a chapter meeting and you're giving it to a member of the chapter who is going out and purchasing the alcohol. Doing things like having a banquet with a cash bar is okay. But if that cash bar includes a drink minimum, and you don't meet that drink minimum, so if they say it's a $500 drink minimum, students somehow only buy $400 worth of alcohol, that extra $100 has to come from somewhere. It comes out of the chapter's treasury. That is now chapter money going toward the purchase of alcohol. That is prohibited. So we can't guarantee any minimum alcohol sales. Third, it can only be possessed or consumed by someone who is of legal drinking age in that jurisdiction. I travel a lot around the country. I'm pretty sure it's still 21 everywhere you go. For our students who happen to be in Canada, or you're lucky to go there, I believe it's 18 or 19, depending on the province. But as far as I know, Canada Alpha is currently inactive, so we have those students where this is a thing, so we don't have to worry about them. So the fun thing that that chapters will try to do is they'll wheel a keg, a case of liquor into someone's apartment and sell cups to attendees to recoup the costs. of having that party. Well, let's walk through what's actually happening here. That chapter is operating an unlicensed, illegal bar with no oversight, no verification of legal consumption, and no protection from what happens if when, not if, but when people make choices they wouldn't be okay with. Does this kind of party happen on their campuses all the time? Absolutely. Did many of us go to this exact party at some point during our college career? Definitely. Do bad things happen at parties like this? Not often, but having a brother who's a university police officer, I can tell you it's a lot more than you think, and it's a lot more you want it to be. Will APO back that chapter up? And will our insurance provider cover the chapter should bad things happen? And that chapter, or that whoever's hosting that party on behalf of the chapter, ends up in court because someone was sexually assaulted in a spare bedroom at that party? Absolutely not, because that is a direct violation of our policies to do that. Now, flipping it the other way, chapter wants to have a banquet with a facility with a liquor license. That bar, that's a cash bar, so no money's going to it. There's no minimum. It's a licensed bartender who's dispensing the drinks, who's checking ID and doing all that. They're responsible for monitoring consumption. They're not serving underage people, and they're responsible for cutting people off if they've had too much. Is this in line with our policy? It can be. But something that we should ask our students when they want to do these kind of events is, what are you getting out of this? After meeting all the requirements that we put on them to do an event with alcohol, what's the actual benefit here? What are you getting from this? Is the risk worth the reward? What's the value? Because they've got a lot of things covered, but there's still a lot of moving parts that's, while it's in line with our policy, some things are just out of their control and that leave them open to risk. Should something happen at that event, whether it's official or unofficial, and there is no such thing as an unofficial event, like someone who's underage has someone buying them drinks all night, and that underage person drives home and has an accident. The story in the campus newspaper, that's going to be on Facebook or social media the next day, isn't going to be student injured in drunk driving accident, but APO policy was followed to the letter. That's not the headline. The headline is going to be drunk student leaving Alpha Phi Omega fraternity party causes accident. A question a lot of your chapters will ask is, what's an APO event? Is this official? Is this unofficial? As I said, there's no such thing as an unofficial event. They don't get to determine that. They don't get to get together and say, okay, well, we've had our meeting. Now here's the unofficial part, and we're going to play in this party, or we're going to do these things. No matter how much they declare something unofficial or avoid talking about it in chapter meetings, all these little tricks and gimmicks that they use to find the magic loophole that somehow makes it not a fraternity event, the test that matters and the test that they have to understand, and that you as section chairs, when they ask you, can we do this, have to get them to understand, is the reasonable outsider test. What does the reasonable outside person think this is? If somebody walks into that event, they talk to the attendees about what they're doing there, how they know each other, etc. What's the impression they leave with? If the impression the answer is, oh, that's APO celebrating their new pledge class with a bar crawl, then we have our answer. No matter if they coach everybody, the answer to this is not coach everybody to lie, because that's unethical. The answer is, like, if the reasonable person, without any coaching, asks them what's going on, and it sounds like it's an APO event, it's an APO event, and our policies apply. So does this mean, because students live together, does this mean a group of friends who happen to be APO can't get together and have a good time? No, it doesn't say that. Friends are going to be friends, and we're not telling them who they can and can't hang out with. You're not there to dictate their behavior. What we are saying is, have your good times. Don't institutionalize them by bringing APO into it. Don't make this an us thing. Along those lines, many states have legalized marijuana. Many states do not. It's a real Wild West broad spectrum out there. But no matter what state you are in, no matter where you are, it is still federally illegal. So no, the chapter cannot sell gummies on the quad as a fundraiser. For the purposes of APO and all of our events, possession, consumption at any fraternity event, member or guest, is prohibited. If this changes at the federal level, we'll come back and talk about this. But until that changes, it is completely prohibited. At any time, you cannot consume marijuana and then come to a service project. You cannot consume marijuana and go to a chapter meeting. It should go without saying, members of the chapter cannot sell drugs to other members of the chapter. What they do on their own time is their business. But we ask that they don't bring APO into it. Skip back a little bit. These are not the right order I wanted them in. Sexual harassment and abuse prevention. The fraternity's policies that we don't condone sexual harassment, we don't condone sexual misconduct, we don't condone discrimination, we don't condone abuse. We want our chapters to be open, welcoming places. They need to be open, welcoming places for members. They need to, and as a section chair, your way you could help them is to have them think about the language they're using, what kind of environment they're creating for the members, what kind of, how they treat each other, even in joking ways, is reflective of the general culture of the chapter. I came from a chapter many years ago that would do things like have a porn party. That is not an okay thing to be doing. We cannot be putting people into situations where they feel threatened, they feel uncomfortable. We want chapters to be aware of consent. Most of their campuses have some type of first-year student education programs like this. They should be aware of those. So yeah, it's, as a section chair, they may come to you. It's really difficult to divide what's chapter drama. It's two people dating and their problems bleed over into the chapter versus what is genuine discrimination or abuse or sexual misconduct. In those cases, it is best to defer to the campus and let the campus people handle that. It's important for us to be aware. It's important for you to have the chapter keep you posted and keep us posted, but in those cases, we tend to lead towards the campus managing that. Come on. Rest of the policy, I'm sure you're familiar with. Transportation issues, we talk about, most of it's safety. When you bring your property to the chapter, they're responsible for it. If you're visiting a chapter, they knock your laptop off the table, that chapter is not buying you a new laptop. If they spill coffee on it, whatever, you're responsible for that kind of thing. The other one I wanted to highlight here is our financial issues. This is our third largest and growing area of risk management issues within the fraternity. We're actively looking at enhancing this policy because we always look at financial issues as, just don't sign contracts in the name of APO, which is fine. But then they do things like have electronic payment systems that are peer-to-peer payment systems. We jokingly refer to as offshore checking, but they have chapters who have their own bank accounts, which is fine if the institution allows it. But then there are signature issues as to who has access to those funds. It's a lot easier for money to go disappearing. Chapters have really, really bad financial issues when it comes to dealing with cash and collecting money. So as section chairs, you'll be basically the first to know this, that we have a policy coming out. It's waiting to be ratified by the board. That's going to do a couple things. The first of which is that all chapters will be required to have two things. If they have off-campus checking, they're required to have two things. One of those is that there must be at least 3 people who have signing authority to that account. typically president treasurer. The third must be an advisor with signing authority onto that account. The other half of that is that nobody who is related by blood or by marriage or by a living situation, so people not living together can be signatories on the account at the same time. So if the president and the treasurer are roommates, only one of them can be the signatory on the account. You have to get somebody else in that role. This is to help prevent money disappearing, take away opportunities for embezzlement. We have had issues over the years where chapters have written checks to cover individuals' insurance, and it had two signatures. It was a president and a treasurer, and they lived together. So we are taking that little loophole out, and we are also putting in a policy that chapters may not use an individual's PayPal or Venmo electronic payment account to conduct chapter business. Because what that amounts to is the chapter, if I'm the treasurer and I use my personal Venmo to collect money on behalf of the chapter, that is no different than the chapter is handing me a stack of cash. Yes, there's electronic receipts, but that's all going straight in my bank account. There's twofold to that. Is one, we don't want chapters handling cash in a manner like that. They need to be using a chapter specific Venmo account tied to the chapter's EIN. The other half of that is, as an individual, when the IRS rules keep changing, but I believe it's going back down to $600. Once $600 of business transactions cross into your account, you get a 1099 from the IRS, which means that counts as income. That's a financial liability. More than once, a student has called in saying, help me, I got this. And we don't really have a way to resolve that for them. So those are two financial policies coming forth. I see a question in the chat. Andrea asks, are there any issues if family members conduct the annual audit for the chapter? The financial inspection. They should not be related to the president or the treasurer. They should not be related to somebody who has signing authority on the account. That's not a firm policy right now. Since you're asking me this question, I'm guessing this has come up. We can connect offline if there's more about that. But my stance would be that while there's no policy that says they can't, it is not preferred for someone who has a relation to somebody who has signing authority on the account, being the one who says, yeah, my son totally did the right thing with all your chapter's money.
That was the question. It's I have a member whose mom does this professionally and had offered services, so I wanted to just double check our thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thought is it's great. They can do it for other chapters, but not for the one that their child is a signing authority on. Other one that applies to you as alumni and advisors, if you are employed in a position that has, say, Title IX requirements or mandatory reporter requirements, that applies to you while you are a volunteer. So if a student comes to you with something that could be a mandatory reporter type item, you need to inform them that you are a mandatory reporter, just like they tell you you do with your Title IX training professionally. Will a more uniform audit process be ever developed by the fraternity? That is a great question. It's on the agenda. Closing some of the larger loopholes has been a higher priority, but it's on the agenda to find some type of formal financial inspection. Audit has a whole lot of connotations to it. It's a financial inspection, not an audit. But yes, we are looking at developing a more uniform process for that. Before I move on, are there any other questions about anything else in the risk management policy? I know this is like the least exciting, least sexy thing of all in the fraternity. And I appreciate your time participating in this, but it's like, this is like the most boring thing until it becomes exciting. It's either really boring or way too spicy and too hot to handle. There's very little in between. when it comes to risk management. So your obligation as section chairs is to make sure that you are aware of the policy at all times, that you are thinking about when you're interacting with chapters, keeping all 10 of these points of this policy in the back of your head. And you're not looking to catch them in things, but if your spidey senses tingle, you should listen to that. As far as the education component goes, the chapters are required to, like I said, participate in risk management training. Section chairs are not authorized to deliver risk management training. And that's not because we don't think you're competent. We don't think, it's not because we don't, we do. We think you're very competent. It's nothing bad. It's that when you present this training, you are speaking in an authoritative voice. And you are now in a fiduciary responsibility yourself, where they go, oh, well, because I know Andrea, I'm going to pick on her. Andrea said, we can do this. And Andrea accidentally, but through no fault of her own, gave bad advice. And something happened to that chapter, and that chapter got sued. Andrea gets named in that lawsuit. By having you disconnected from the presentation of the risk management policy, we are protecting you from that liability and that fiduciary responsibility that comes from this. So it's not that we think you're very competent at what you do. We are protecting you. Many of you are just now recent grads. Some of us have been around for a while, but a lot of you are recent grads. And that kind of financial liability is not something we wish to put on you. So that's the reason behind that. But you should be aware of it. And if they say something that sounds fishy, like, hey, did you think about this? And then take it to your region chair. With that, just like you and your volunteers, when it comes time to interacting and doing things chapter, you should be modeling the appropriate behavior. We should not be, we should not be showing up to conferences intoxicated ourselves. We should not be doing things that go against the general health and safety of our members. We shouldn't be involved in hazing our students. We should not be putting ourselves in a situation that should something bad happen and you were in the room when it happened and you didn't stop it, that we're having to have a conversation that is less pleasant than this. Your other obligation as a section chair is helping chapters create systems of accountability so they think about these things themselves. We want them, not in all things that they do, thinking about risk management, basically almost everything they do, like think about so if we do this, what's going to happen? What liability are we opening ourselves up to? Like if we're going to have a service project and we're working at a nature preserve and they're going to let us cut things down, hey, we should make sure we have some chainsaw training before they just hand us this chainsaw. Everybody loves the nature preserve project until somebody loses a foot.
We all made it out just fine.
We all did.
By a miracle.
Justin, it was only a finger, and it was a long time ago.
Okay, as long as it's grown back, right?
Y'all joke about the chainsaw thing. I actually had a chapter about 15, 20 years ago, right after a hurricane had hit the Orlando area. They wanted to go out and help a lot of people in need. So they wanted to hop in the back of a pickup truck with a bunch of chainsaws to go cutting up trees that were blocking streets.
Oh, no.
And not thinking about power lines and all that. And they actually got mad at me when I hollered at them in the chapter meeting saying, there is no way in hell I'm letting you do this. And I was section chair and advisor at the time. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm certainly not joking. I was an active for this, so I take no responsibility. But we had someone lose the end of a finger with a hydraulic log splitter at a Girl Scout camp. The log started to fall out, and she shoved it back in.
Oh.
And she pulled her hand away and said, "It just caught my glove." And then she took the glove off. And then we found out that shock does some wild things to your pain receptors. It was fine. It was fine.
It was fine, right? But things happen, and it doesn't. I mean, they spend a lot of time figuring out how can we get away with drinking and not thinking how can we not lose a finger. So a lot of your role as section chair is guiding them to make the least painful decision. And so when it does become something, we have to think about crisis management. As students, we need to be thinking about what happens when a crisis hits, because they do. It could be, an accident results in severe injury, sexual assault or domestic disputes, because our students do date. They do date each other. A member either attempts suicide or does die by suicide. Or what if the chapter is accused of something by local authorities or by the college? There's a natural disaster, a hurricane comes through, a pandemic, a riot on a campus. Lots of things can happen. So as section chairs, you are going to be one of their first calls, hopefully. We tell them, of course, protect lives, get everybody to safety, and coordinate with services. But your role as a section chair is you're their first line support. Ideally, they're going to their chapter advisors and they're coming to you. And you will be keeping the rest of your regional chair and the national office apprised to what's going on based off of what you hear from the chapter. So make sure you know your region chair's phone number. Marissa will tell you if you're allowed to have her phone number or not. But we want our chapters, we want them to help, we want them to do things, but we don't want them to get in the way in the case of a national disaster. In the case of the more likely way you will get involved, if it's an investigation into something going on, you'll be coordinating with your regional chair on that. You are not an investigating authority. You are not to, unless this regional chair or myself or Stacy says, hey, can you find this information for us? Your role in any type of investigation or fraternity action is pretty limited on that. You will be the one to report it to us, and you'll be kept apprised as to what's going on. If there are issues that require a response, if it's an immediate action, something that's going to hear back from you should hear back from us from the fraternity within 24 hours. And the chapter should hear back from you within 24 hours. We'd like some time, but when it comes to short-term follow-up on things, they need to be here within the week. A lot of your role as a section chair will be long-term monitoring and prevention. Ideally, if chapters are listening to you, they never have to get to this level with their regional chair or with the national office. So with that, Marissa, we're going to break them up into two groups. Marissa has a scenario for some of you, and I have a scenario for the rest of you.
Justin, do you want to take a minute, or anyone from the breakout room, to share or debrief before we?
Yeah, who from the room would like to kind of talk about what we had? I will volunteer one of you.
He will, y'all.
Matt, why don't you tell us what we talked about?
Oh, sure. I was trying to let everyone else talk. I figured everybody was tired of hearing me. Basically, we had a situation where there was an event involved alcohol. It was initially put on by the chapter for several years, and then advisors told them they had to change some things around because they couldn't do alcohol with chapter funds. So a couple of brothers went off on their own, signed financial contracts, which we didn't even get to that part, Justin. as some other entity that I'm not sure really existed, but they did that so they could do the alcohol. Advisors found out the very last minute. The event still happened. One person ended up in the hospital. Things started going around on social media. So a lot of it was, what are some of the things that you have to handle? We talked about the initial triage of given the severity and given the fact there was somebody involved in going to the hospital, et cetera, of getting the region chair and other fraternity officials as needed aware as quick as possible. We also talked about being careful what you put in writing, whether it be text message, email, anything. If you're having to reach out to a region chair and for whatever reason you get a voicemail, you don't get a response from text, really you want to kind of take the stance of, hey, as soon as you can, give me a call back, and leave it at that. Don't leave any details as to what's going on, because all of that can be discoverable within court if it ever went to court. And then we talked about some other longer term things of possibly what happens if the university gets involved, et cetera. Did I miss anything, Justin? You let me do all the dirty work, huh?
You hit the high points.
All right,
Yeah.
Group that hung around in the main room, who wants to share the conversation, highlights from that conversation?
Luke, you want to rock, paper, scissors for it?
Sure, I'll go. I gotcha.
One day, someone will take me up on rock, paper, scissors.
I don't have a camera, so you just have to trust me. Or I can do the hand raise, but that's always paper. So ours was about a conference advisor who was using their personal PayPal and Venmo account to handle conference funds in, conference funds out. And while in our story they did a good job and were financially responsible to the chapter and accounted for everything, money in, money out, because everything was coming through a personal account, they got tax forms and got hit with $1,000 in additional tax liability at the end of the year because all that conference money was treated as income. So the question was just, what could have been done different? And the obvious answer to that is don't. I forget, is our official policy that chapters can or can't have their own Venmo accounts at this point? I know it's been both over the years.
There is no official policy that says they can or cannot. It is their preference that if they choose to do electronic transactions, that they do have one, but soon it will be policy that they may not use a person, that this scenario cannot happen.
At one point, I thought we were telling the chapters not to use at least one of the services. I don't think it was electronic broadly. I think it was one of them, and I forget why. There was some issue with it, but
Cash App, because it's
maybe
not
that's what it was.
Yeah.
At any rate, yeah. So yeah. I mean, the obvious answer is that either the host chapter uses their chapter one that exists, or you create a new account and use it for section business and dissolve it at there for conference business and dissolve it at the end. There's a few ways to do that if you want to keep your dollars separate from chapter dollars, but not have it go through a personal one. Have it go through one controlled by the chapter, because then that is falls under the tax exempt umbrella. As for what to do now, we had a few different points of view on that, and a lot of it was very context dependent. Who's the conference advisor? How much are they? Someone who knew better? Was it me? Was it me being a lazy dumbass and getting myself in trouble because I kind of brought that on myself? Or is it someone who maybe didn't get the training and didn't get the risk management and was some random alumni who agreed to help and got in over their head on accident? And we just talked a little there about, do you put it on the chapter because they were doing service for the chapter? Do you mobilize chapter resources to do additional fundraising to help mitigate that financial loss that their conference advisor got hit by? Do you look to other alumni to help pass the hat because they may have more financial resources? Didn't really come to one specific answer there. It was very much probably the right answer isn't just to tell that person sorry, sucks to be you, but there's you also can't burden, especially if it's a large enough burden, you can't burden the incoming chapter. You know, if it's a spring conference, you can't tell a bunch of new freshman pledges, oh, by the way, guess what you're going to pay for?
All right, thanks. So we'll wrap this up. I know we're a little over on time and appreciate you hanging out for that. The big takeaways that you should get from this is that if we can do anything, especially with section chairs, you are our biggest point of prevention. Prevention is always preferable to reaction when it comes to anything here. If we can prevent a chapter from doing something risky before it ever happens, that is worth way more time and energy than what it takes to fix it after the fact. Like you talked about in both scenarios, we could have stopped either of those before they happened with the proper education, or like, hey, whoa, no, don't do that. We could save everybody a lot of headaches. It saves our resources. It reduces the harm. And the case of the section conference, that's $1,000 financial hit is not small potatoes to anybody in this organization. That's a lot of harm they're going through. And now they're, even if we did raise the money the chapter chose to raise the money to make that person whole, they're now an audit risk. So they now have continued harm that comes after that. In the case of the chapter throwing the party afterwards, I mean, someone went to the hospital, and there's reputational harm there as well. Anything we can do to prevent them from doing those things and see the bigger picture and understand, like, you're grown ass adults now. Like, you don't get away with as much as you used to as kids. Like, you have the rights and responsibilities that come with adulthood. Anything we can do to get that in their minds and get them thinking about, like, what's the best way to do this that's not gonna cause a whole bunch of harm is by far the best solution. But when the chapters inevitably don't do these things, and we do have events that happen, making sure we have clear communication throughout all of it. It was mentioned, Matt brought up that should a risk management issue happen within your section, and you are notifying somebody about it, you are not to send an email to your region chair, copying Stacy, copying me, laying out everything that happened. You are to call your region chair and say, hey, or send a text message that says, hey, I need to talk to you. And I need to talk to you. It's kind of important. Can I get 5 minutes? Chat over the phone. It's not that we are trying to hide anything. It's that once you put something in writing, it's discoverable. It does come out in court. The example I use is there's a region chair that I have a long-standing friendship with, and there are many, many things I would rather go through in life that are bad than have mine and his group chat leaked and read back to me in court. So think about the conversations you've had with people and ask, do you want anything you've ever sent that Andrew's probably texting me right now? Do I want that read back to me in court? And the answer is hell no, I do not. And you probably don't want that either. So save yourself that headache, call it to have a conversation that way. And make sure that if you think something's going on and you see something, say something. I know it's a cliche, but it's valid. If you hear something's going on, say something. We would rather look into it and try to get ahead of it before it becomes a problem than find out about it. We have a Google News alert. I'd rather find out from you than have my Google News alert for your campus, one of your campuses pop, and it tell me all about what's going on. So with that, I know we're over on time, but I have time if anybody wants to hang out for any questions.